Okay. No? So, good afternoon. The Ministry of Sport, the Ministry of Culture of Spain is very honored to be here one more year. So we want to thank you, the Fundación Biodiversidad and the Ministry of Ecological Transition, this new opportunity of being here. Thank you so much. The COP is a high-level forum in which we can meet technicians, professionals, and also representatives or NGOs and other countries. And it's a unique place for searching, discussing, and explaining different projects, initiatives, ideas. And it's a place where it's possible to know how we share the same problems, but we have different ways of approaching them. So I think that we think it's an unique opportunity for sharing and fostering these ideas. Spain, like the rest of the world, is suffering the effects of climate change. As a consequence of this, over our cultural heritage, we are, for example, changing our visiting hours to the archaeological sites. We are also building walls in our coastlines for preserving dolmens and this kind of structures, historic structures. And we are also discussing the possibility of extracting shipwrecks from the sea due to the tropicalization of the water of the Mediterranean Sea. Without, of course, forgetting the cultural landscapes and all the troubles related to them and with the climate change, such as fires, heavy rains, depopulation, and also droughts, for example. So today we are going to highlight the power of cultural heritage as a resource, an strategic resource. We share the vision that cultural heritage is invaluable repository full of knowledge, wisdom that we can use for the adaptive strategies and methodologies to address climate change effects. So today, specifically, we are going to focus in two projects, two recent initiatives developed by our ministry, the Ministry of Culture, and they are, for one side, the Green Paper on Sustainable Management on Cultural Heritage, and the second one is the protocol for the implementation of green energies in cultural assets. Accompanying me this afternoon, we have Mistress Cela del Pozo Coll, Head of the Support Unit of the General Directorate of Cultural Heritage and Fine Arts of the Ministry of Culture, who will present the Green Paper. We have Mistress Silvia Rodríguez Bermejo, Head of the Legal Area of the General Subdirectorate for the Management and Coordination of Cultural Assets, who will present the protocol. Here we have Mr. George Kremlis, Chairman of the Greek Initiative for the Protection of Cultural and Natural Heritage and Climate Change. It's a good friend of our ministry and also a pioneer introducing cultural heritage issues in this summit and conference, so we are very, very pleased. And we have Mr. Pablo Manzano Baena, researcher at the Basque Center for Climate Change. He wasn't able to come, unfortunately. He's teaching at Brazil at the moment, so he has sent us a video, so we will see this video. Mr. George is going to compare our initiative to other carried out by the Greek government, the Greek initiative, and Pablo is going to talk about the role of the intangible heritage in terms of addressing the climate change effects. So let's going to start, and Mistress Cela, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Thank you for the organization. Thank you for the Ministry of Transición Ecológica y Reto Demográfico. First of all, let me introduce you the context in which this project is taking place. As Antonio has told, climate change and environmental degradation are an existential threat to Europe and the world. To overcome these challenges, the European Green Deal will transform the UA into a modern, competitive and resource efficiency economy, ensuring no net greenhouse emission by 2050, economic growth decoupled from the resource use, and crucially, the premise of leaving no people and no place behind. In this sense, the new European Bauhaus initiative is a particular interest as a creative and transdisciplinary movement that challenges us to imagine and build a new future together, with the three values that are inseparable from this movement: beauty, sustainability, and collaboration. The Ministry of Culture recognizes culture as a driver for adaptation and resilience in the changing global scenario subject to uncertainty. Therefore, the Council presidency of the UA, two of the lines of work are culture as an essential public good, as a global public good at the highest political level, and the sustainable management of cultural heritage, its universal access and its role as the backbone of the territory. The Directorate General for Cultural Heritage and Fine Arts of the Ministry of Culture proposed and has been developing a series of specific and interrelated actions. One of them is the Green Paper for the Sustainable Management of Cultural Heritage. I would like to explain the chronology of this project to you. At the Council of Ministers of Culture of the European Union held on 21 November 2021, Spain urged the European Commission to work on the creation of a Green Paper to address the sustainability of cultural heritage management. The commitment was reiterated at the Euro-Mediterranean Conference of Ministers of Culture, which was held in Naples in June 2022. At Mondiacult 2022 in Mexico, more than 150 countries reaffirmed that need for a culture-specific SDG. The G20 Culture Ministers meeting in India in August 2023 again repeated for the creation of this SDG and the consideration of culture, that's important for us, as a global public good in the post-2030 agenda. The Spanish ex-Minister of Culture and Sport, Miquel Iceta Llorens, at the presentation on the program of the Spanish presidency of the Council of the European, repeat that. He defended the role of culture as a global public good and the need to create this specific SDG. The Green Paper was introduced at the informal meeting of Ministers of Culture in Cáceres in September 2023. As a part of a program of the Spanish presidency of the Council of the European Union, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. The Declaración de Cáceres is a document that contains the unanimous commitment of the 27 member states that culture will henceforth be considered an essential public good and a global public good at the highest political level. So, the sustainable management of cultural heritage, its universal access, and its role in structuring the territory are some of the thematic axes of the Spanish presidency of the European Union. Let me explain a little bit about the Green Paper. The signs of the current development models weakening are increasingly clear. Some time ago, the climate crisis forced progress to be made and applying sustainability-based criteria. And in this line, the SDG of the 2030 Agenda and the European Green Deal have become the two main pillars with which the planning strategies of governments are designed. Along with this, the COVID pandemic, the economic and energy crisis, and the political instability that followed, it makes reconsidering cultural management policies as an urgent task. Recent events have shown that culture is an essential asset that provides greater well-being to society, making it fairer, freer, and richer in its diversity. Let's ask ourselves what culture heritage mean? Cultural heritage sets, in a special way, an example of sustainable and resilient model that coexists in balance with nature. Cultural heritage, as we understand it today, comprises tangible and intangible elements that construct a cultural identity. Cultural heritage is not simply the creation of others that are worth preserving. It is what we have been doing and what we want to continue with us. The concept of cultural heritage refers to a complex, multifaceted reality that is constantly being constructed and is subject to social, technical, legal, and intellectual assessment that evolve through history. So, what's a green paper and why we can need it? A green paper is a document created to stimulate reflection and provide a roadmap of a specific issue. In its elaboration, stakeholders, organizations, and individuals are invited to participate in a process of consultation and discussion about the issue, identifying objectives and priorities and generating the necessary mechanisms for their development. In this case, the green paper is born with the intention of becoming a living document with a vocation for improvement and permanent updating. This is reason why there is not only a paper publication, but also a website open to the expansion of content, thanks to the participation of citizens. In this book, sustainability is conceived as an integral concept. We participate in a new notion of culture that is much more broader, and in which heritage identity emerges and becomes a key element of a social development, and therefore an essential asset. In line with the very notion of cultural asset and the different types of heritage it includes, it creates a space of reference for any interested party. I mean professional, managers, archaeologists, historians, architects, engineers, curators, restorers, but also ordinary citizens or local associations, in order to be of equal use to the administration responsible for its management, the owner, and the custodian of a property. The aim is to advance in the construction of a common management model to meet present and future challenges, to ensure coherence between national policies and international standards, to encourage cooperation between the manager and the community, to promote the implementation of evaluation and monitoring tools, and to encourage the adoption of a proactive approach to sustainable management. Let me explain you the steps we follow in its elaboration. This book aims to be a tool to facilitate the daily management of cultural assets and to promote good practices in this field. So we developed these steps. In March 2022, a working group was set up, comprising technicians from the administration and different professionals from the sector, including organizations and civil society. Likewise, in June 2022, a public consultation process was launched to establish a channel for its institution, agents, professionals, owners, managers, and users of cultural heritage to share their experience in the day-to-day management of cultural heritage. Since then, and with the all contribution made, the writing of the manual was carried out. So this is a document that integrates all the aspects of cultural heritage: accessibility, sustainability, financing, management, dissemination and communication, etc. And that reflects the casuistry of all types of heritage, highlighting heritage as a traditional model of sustainable management and a paradigm of the circular economy. It was created as a reference publication for anyone interested, not necessarily a specialist in the conservation of cultural heritage. It also aims to reflect the will of all the agents involved in the development and construction of a common space for action that allows for the sustainable management of cultural heritage. In this sense, it is aligned with the great challenges of our time: the demographic challenge, climate change, digital transformation, and also social cohesion. We would like to focus on the link between heritage society with people and the potential that heritage has with respect to sustainable human development as a shared resource, life and care for the same time, thus favoring social, economical, and environmental harmony. It focuses on what has been done in cultural heritage management policies, what consequences it has had, and what the current needs are, and how we should act in the new context. This project represents an opportunity to manage and understand heritage from a global perspective, integrating natural, cultural, and intangible heritage. The digital publication can be downloaded in Spanish, English, French, and the 3 co-official languages of Spain. It's for that it also has a website in English and Spanish, constantly updated. It responds to the desire and origin of this project to become an agile, sample, and clarifying tool for its users. The Green Paper identified the pillar or axis for maintaining sustainable heritage management. For us, we find conservation, use and enjoyment, and social participation. So what are the main problems that we are currently facing? I'm going to be clear. Climate change, emergencies, lack of investment and resources, overexploitation, vandalism and spoliation, depopulation, and inequality. In line with this, the Green Paper and its website develops a set of tools and challenges. The tools, we developed some tools to make the responsible and conscious management of cultural heritage that has a different instrument that make it possible to undertake any project with guarantees and success. The most important instruments for us are described in this paper: organization, funding, conservation and documentation, research, development and innovation, and at last but not least, communication, dissemination and heritage education. We have found some challenges. In this paper, we want to analyze some of the challenges that cultural heritage management must face and the way to address them for a conscious position of sustainability and any form. Challenges linked to environmental sustainability, challenges linked to economic sustainability, and challenges linked to social sustainability. And we found also good practices. They are examples of success. They have a very diverse nature, which can be related to the axes or pillars identified for the sustainable management of cultural heritage. They are also an initiative for small managers to be inspired and to send us theirs. To end my speech, let me introduce you how we can turn tradition into a sustainable management tool. We consider that heritage provides a vital bridge between the sense of identity and belonging and the need to take on new ways of life. To achieve environmental sustainability, it is often desirable to look back and learn from the cultural dimension of past habits and lifestyles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cela. It was very, very interesting. And later on, we will discuss over this document. Thank you. So now is the time for know more about this protocol. So, Silvia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Thank you to the organization. Thank you to the Ministry of Green Transition. And thank you for being here today. There is an increasing demand of renewable energies, and the installation of these various systems have the potential to negatively impact and threaten the worth and value of our cultural heritage. This situation has led to the urgent need to establish common guidelines. In this scenario, and due to the slowness of drafting and approving standards, it was decided to create a national document with the collaboration of technicians from the different territories of our country, of Spain. In fact, it's important for you to understand that Spanish is divided into 19 different regions, autonomous regions, and each of them has control over their own cultural heritage. So we therefore decided to write a protocol in which all parties would collaborate. The result of our efforts is a protocol for the implementation of renewable energies in cultural heritage properties that I'm about to present you. In one hand, in Spain, environmental impact assessments are legally recognized. These evaluations have a section dedicated to the impact on cultural heritage. Unfortunately, this section is seldom completed correctly and needs to be reassessed and reinforced. This protocol could serve as a reference to complete it properly with the goal of protecting our cultural heritage. And on the other hand, we consider that these environmental impact assessments aren't enough for protect our cultural heritage. The tools that really interest us and have inspired us to protect our cultural heritage are the Heritage Impact Assessment. Referring to the 1972 World Heritage Convention, the inclusion of a site on the World Heritage List obliges the state to a series of commitments. One of these commitments involves carrying out a heritage impact assessment prior to any intervention. Heritage impact assessments are endorsed by UNESCO and promoted by international reference institutions such as ICOMOS. This tool, these heritage impact assessments, are not included in the Spanish legislation, but we have an interest in making them mandatory. We believe that they are essential for any intervention in cultural heritage and that they are fundamental when talking about the implementation of green energies. That is why we have been inspired by the content of this kind of document. Following on from this kind of assessments, there are a number of questions that need to be asked when drafting a project of installation of green energies in sensitive environments. The first one may seem obvious, but it's essential. Is a proposed intervention really necessary, absolutely necessary? Sometimes we insist on actions that are not. If it's really necessary, there are other questions to be asked. Does the proposed project affect the cultural values of the property? And does the project generate any impact? We're talking about visible impact or other sensory impacts like acoustic impacts, for instance. Or does the project affect tangible or intangible values, cultural aspects? And the last but not least is the action reversible. Reversibility is an unavoidable principle in cultural heritage interventions. These are the fundamental questions, but it's also important to go to a higher level of analysis and consider the different scales of the territory. So in the protocol, we consider 3 scales for the interventions: the monument, the historic sites, and the landscapes. In the case of monuments, when we talk about renewable energies, we are referring to self-consumption facilities. The Spanish historical heritage law does not allow installation in this kind of properties without prior authorization. But if the proposal is clearly justified, the project could be evaluated and, if appropriate, could be authorized. Among the aspects to be considered in the assessment, first of all, it's important that the property is already efficient. That is to say that the property doesn't have energy losses due to poor construction, bad materials, nor watertight carpentries, etc. It's not worth installing green energies for self-consumption in a building that is not efficient because of its morphology. Secondly, if the installation is justified, the visual impacts are one of the most important aspects to consider. They will be evaluated in 3 ways. Immediate way, visual affection at street level by pedestrians, near vision, visual impact for the surroundings of the properties, an overall view, visual impact from viewpoints or singular points inside or outside the urban area. Furthermore, in the case of monuments located in urban cities, whenever possible, the installation will be placed on roofs on secondary buildings or annexes to the monument, in courtyards, on the ground, and always out of sight of pedestrians at street level. If it's not possible, the arrangement of these facilities on flat roofs having a parapet will be preferable. In the case of buildings with sloping roofs, the installation will be placed on the side oriented towards interior areas, not visible from the street, and in all the cases, the photovoltaic panels shall be chromatically integrated with the roof. In no case shall the panels occupy the entire length of the roof, being installed in a maximum percentage established by the administration and following an appropriate compositional criterion. Anyway, the auxiliary wiring shall not be visible, but it's important not to cut into the building, so it will be necessary to study the roots and camouflage them with power strips or similar. Of course, the new installation shall not hinder the maintenance of the building, and overall the installation will adopt the principle of reversibility. In the case of historical sites, priority shall be given to the creation of energy communities. What are the energy communities? They consist of a collective use of the same installations. They are forms of collective self-consumption in which the participants benefit from the energy they produce. It's a very interesting measure for historic sites, and it opens up the possibility of having photovoltaic energy installations on the roofs of industrial estates, canopies, pergolas, parking lots, located at a distance of up to 2,000 meters. In fact, many historic towns have parking facilities near their protected areas. These areas could be useful for creation of energy communities. It's also suggested that the municipalities with historic sites elaborate within their plans maps of potential solar resources, identifying those public or private elements that can be used as support for generating centers, like roofs, rooftops, canopies, industrial estates, parking lots, etc. The criteria for evaluating these projects will be basically the same as those mentioned for the monuments. The photovoltaic panels will be chromatically integrated with the roof. The panels will follow the criterion of grouping or concentration in an harmonious way. The wiring will be hidden, and overall the installation will adopt the principle of reversibility. Furthermore, in this case of historic sites, visual barriers that limit the visual impact, such as vegetation screens or camouflage with construction materials, may also be assessed, always with the fundamental objective or not creating negative visual impacts on the cultural site. And we reach landscapes. At this scale, the effects of large energy infrastructures on, for example, sites of ethnographic interest, picturesque sites, cultural itineraries, in short, all cultural landscapes are more complicated. And the impact assessment is more complex because the effect on landscape can be perceived from miles away, both visually and sonically. We are also faced with the problem of the amplification of impacts due to the concentration of dispersion of this kind of installations, solar farms, wind farms, in a relatively small areas. And it will be very important to assess the impact on tangible and intangible cultural values which are really present in the cultural landscape. But what is the main problem? The main problem is the lack of the legal definition of landscapes, of cultural landscapes. There is no specific law on cultural landscapes, and the state law on historical heritage in Spain does not recognize the concept of cultural landscape. nor does a large part of the regional legislation on cultural heritage. Anyway, in the case of projects proposing wind and solar farms, it is essential to carry out previous studies in order to know all the properties or remains of interest in the site and all the cultural manifestations that may be found. Once the appropriate information has been collected, it's necessary to consider different alternatives for the same project so that the administration can choose and authorize the most appropriate one. And the administration will also propose buffer zone to avoid cultural damage. In all cases, certain documentation will be required for the administration to evaluate the project correctly. As basic documentation and without prejudice to the specific additional documentation determined by any administration, the projects must include first a supporting memorandum. That is, a document with a technical justification of the project. The justification will be based on energy efficiency and sustainability criteria. This memorandum will include the study of different alternatives in order to find the better one. Second, a descriptive memorandum. That is a document detailing all the technical characteristics of the proposed installations. The assembly, maintenance, and disassembly plan of the installation will be specified, describing the reversibility of the action, because at the end of the useful life of the installation, the owner shall be obliged to remove the elements in order to avoid the accumulation and the abandonment of obsolete installations. Complete plan of the projects will also be submitted with plans, elevations, sections to scale, and a photographic report, including images of the current state of the place and simulations or photomontage of the proposal from different visual scales. Moreover, and on the other hand, as for the professionals we should carry out in these evaluations, it's appropriate to have multidisciplinary teams that includes archaeologists, architects, historians, mainly professionals trained in the field of cultural heritage. To conclude the presentation, this protocol has been created as a first step, and is intended to be a reference for all technicians who have to design or to evaluate this type of projects, and for all promoters. The main idea we want to convey to you is that heritage conservation is not incompatible with adaptation to climate change, as long as the implementation of green energies in protected properties is carried out on a case-by-case basis, and it's always supported by reports from competent technicians. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Silvia. A very necessary document, as we can see. So thank you so much, and later on we will put in common these topics. So it's the turn of Mr. George Kremlis. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Antonio. It is a real pleasure to be part of this important panel with prominent speakers from the Ministry of Culture to discuss about a very important theme, the cultural heritage in a period of climate crisis. The cultural heritage as a resource, something which is connected with our roots, our traditions, our history. As cultural heritage is part of our history, and we need to protect and to promote it. And I'm really very pleased, Sela has referred to this, that this COP28 has referred to the cultural dimension, and there will be a meeting of ministers of culture to be held on the 8th of December, a high-level one, here in Dubai, to discuss how we can mainstream, integrate culture in climate action, which I do believe is an important result. And in that respect, there is also a petition, a letter that was drafted by Europa Nostra to encourage this initiative as regards culture in the combat against the climate crisis, which is extremely important. I am speaking in my capacity as the chairman of the Greek initiative at United Nations level. This is an initiative that we have launched in 2019 that we co-drive with UNESCO, UNFCCC, and the World Meteorological Organization. I'm happy to invite you all on our panel, which will be held on the 4th at 5:30 p.m. Antonio will be one of the speakers to share with us the good practices that you have developed in Spain. I will be the moderator of this event, and we do hope that the importance of assessing the impacts of the climate crisis to our cultural and natural heritage, as natural heritage is also part of our cultural heritage. And when we were with Antonio in Mallorca, we have discussed the landscape. The landscape is a resource. It is part of our both environmental, cultural, and natural heritage, and in that respect, it is also to be preserved. And I was happy to hear the broad definition that Sela has given to what we understand by cultural heritage. It was given also in Mallorca. The broadest possible, covering both tangible and intangible, covering much more than what we would call monuments, and we have a lot in Spain and in Greece, but it's not only that. It is our traditions, it is our modern architecture, it is habits, customs, and a lot of traditions that need to be preserved as part of our also intangible heritage, and which are very important because what is important is to develop a new culture which is the new climate culture. How the citizens, all of us, can become drivers for this new mission, which will be the mission for the chakras of the humanity, namely a mission to integrate cultural heritage in this very broad definition in the climate action. And I would even add to make this cultural narrative a driver for more climate action, because the new generations expect this. Special groups, indigenous communities, the islands of the Pacific, the island states of the Pacific and of the Indian Ocean, which are threatened because of the rise of the sea level, and which are really desperate in this, let's say, battle against the climate crisis, with the idea to increase mitigation, because climate combat has two pillars. One is how we mitigate, and the other is how we adapt. And they are both relevant in this exercise, because we can be drivers as circular citizens. I use this term. Sela has referred to circular economy. Circular economy is the new economic model that will enable us all to preserve the resources of the planet. And when we preserve the resources, we do not preserve only the minerals and the critical raw materials that we need desperately for the energy transition. We preserve also our planet, our environment, our island states, and the islands are part both of our natural and our cultural heritage. Having said that, I would like to say a few words on the two initiatives. The one is the green paper on the sustainable management of cultural heritage. I had the pleasure to be in Mallorca. This is an excellent piece of work. It is the best practice. Congratulations, Spain, for that. And I do believe that this should become, let's say, a green paper at European Union level. Of course, it refers to the Spanish legislation, but I do believe that an exercise can be carried out at the level of the 27 member states to contribute to a publication which, as a basis, will use the skeleton, the architecture of this paper, will feed in the good practices of other countries, and will be adopted as a publication of the European Union. Because I do believe that the European Union should be doing more on culture and climate. The other point that Sylvia has presented, the protocol on how you can make compatible, friendly to the culture, the renewable energy sources, is a very important one. As you know, our target is to improve renewable energy sources. We are developing and we are setting more and more high targets. In Greece, our target is an 80% of electricity by 2030. 2030, which is extremely important, and by 2040 to cut emissions by 80%, while the target by 2050 is zero net. So it is very important to promote renewables, which currently are facing two problems. One problem is the social acceptance. Mm-hmm. We all know that in a lot of our villages, islands in Greece and in Spain and in other parts of the European Union, citizens, the local people, don't like renewables because they use here a cultural argument. They say that renewables pollute, I put this in inverted commas, their environment, their cultural environment. It is something that disturbs the landscape. And here we have the Council of Europe Convention on the Landscape. And I remember I had a very interesting discussion with the president of the Supreme Court, of the Chamber of the Supreme Court, the fifth chamber, which was the environmental chamber, for one wind turbine that was 20 years ago on the island of Mykonos, the very famous island. He was completely against it because his point was that a wind turbine on the island of Mykonos will undermine the cultural heritage. So he was using more a cultural argument than a landscape argument, than an environmental argument. Therefore, social acceptance is extremely important. And this is also the second very relevant point when you develop renewables in areas where you have historic monuments, where you have UNESCO World Heritage areas, where you have national parks. And here again, there is a communication from the European Union on renewables on Natura 2000 sites. But this is purely on the species, fauna and flora to be protected. Here the dimension is the cultural dimension. How far from the Acropolis or from Alhambra or from the Khedive gardens you can build or you can put some solar panels or let's say a wind turbine, etc. And I do believe that the protocol in that respect gives a very good guidance to the technicians, as Sylvia has said, but also to the local population, because the local population knows that there is a guidance, that people do not work out of the blue, because an investor is a powerful investor, can have access to the mayor, to the municipality, can pretend that he's creating jobs, that he will get the permit. This protocol is extremely useful, and hopefully it can lead also to a European guidance to be adopted at the level of the European Union. So congratulations, Spain, for both initiatives. We are both countries sharing a very broad cultural and natural heritage. We are Mediterranean countries. And my last remark is that when in 2021 the EU Med9, that is to say, the 9 member states of the European Union, which in reality are 8, but we have accepted in the family Portugal as well, as a Mediterranean country, have met. They have agreed on a declaration. And in this declaration, there is a pilot project run by the Academy of Athens. And for Spain, the monument that was selected is Alhambra and the gardens. Yes. And tomorrow, Antonio will say something about that. This is something that we are protecting under the methodology that was developed by the Academy of Athens to make, and this is my final remark because we are out of time, to make the monuments resilient to the climate change. And I would use the word waterproof that we were using for our watches in the past, but now the word is to adapt and to make them resilient. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, George. Brilliant, as usual. We have found your words very inspiring for us. We will follow your recommendations, and we are very proud by the acceptance of these documents. We will take our steps, following your recommendations. We also we totally agree this vision of that cultural landscape comprises also the natural. The natural is inside the cultural dimension. So we are going to see the video of Pablo. He's going to talk about the importance of intangible heritage for addressing the climate change effects.
Un saludo y gracias por la invitación a este evento. Vengo a hablar de la tradición como una herramienta de gestión sostenible, lo cual es importante a la hora de hablar de cambio climático y de gestión. El conocimiento tradicional se ha probado como muy útil. Hay un refinamiento de este mismo a lo largo de los siglos, no basado en el método científico, sino más bien en una prueba y error de comunidades que llevan siglos y hasta milenios ocupando esos territorios. Su codificación, asimismo, no es ortodoxa y no pertenece a lo que es el método científico, sino que se basa en tradiciones y supersticiones, y es la academia la encargada de entender estas codificaciones. Un ejemplo muy interesante de adaptación comprobada a circunstancias locales es la gestión de los agdales o vedados de pasto que se abren en verano en el Atlas Medio y en el Alto Atlas en Marruecos, estudiado por Pablo Domínguez y otros compañeros, donde la regulación del uso de estas zonas se realiza de forma religiosa y no es mediante un entendimiento realmente de esta práctica agronómica que, sin embargo, protege mucho la producción pastoril. Esto se liga a manejo por pueblos indígenas que pueden ser tanto de grupos de cazadores-recolectores como de grupos de pastores, por ejemplo, en los sistemas pastados en los que yo me ocupo, pero donde siempre hay una base de conocimiento tradicional sobre este territorio codificado de diferentes formas, como hemos analizado en este reciente trabajo en el Journal of Environmental Management. Los pastores son un ejemplo en el que me voy a concentrar un poco más porque es mi área de trabajo, con una probada capacidad de adaptación. Aquí vemos, por ejemplo, una típica lluvia del trópico donde puede caer mucha precipitación en una zona concreta y no en zonas aledañas, lo que dificulta mucho la gestión si no es a través de los sistemas comunales que abundan en estos sistemas pastoriles, o por ejemplo el espectro de lluvias de la zona de Marsabit, en el centro de Kenia, donde tenemos años extraordinariamente secos y años extraordinariamente húmedos, lo cual no hace fácil esta gestión, pero sin embargo, por la movilidad y por la gobernanza de los sistemas pastoriles que está codificada en este saber tradicional, pues se puede conseguir aprovechar muchísimo y de forma muy eficiente estas zonas. La transhumancia en España también es un buen ejemplo. La red de vías pecuarias que cubre toda la península en general se especializa en explotar zonas de montaña al norte de España, donde hay una precipitación constante en verano que no hay en otras zonas de la península y además una buena temperatura, lo que provoca un un crecimiento vegetal, una producción vegetal bastante aceptable, y sin embargo se combina con otras zonas del sureste y del sur, donde la producción vegetal se concentra en los meses de principio y de fin de año, haciendo un sistema perfecto de movilidad. Esto lo hemos analizado en este paper de la revista Pastoralism. Aparte de esto, también hay un elemento importante planetario. Este es el diagrama que presentaba David Attenborough en la última COP de cómo el Holoceno ha sido una época extraordinariamente constante en los cambios ambientales que probablemente ha facilitado la emergencia de la civilización. Pero aún así, nosotros como civilización sedentaria somos muy sensibles a los cambios que puede haber. Por ejemplo, esta es la última vez que el mundo estuvo más allá de los 2 grados, en el subóptimo holocénico, donde había un lago Chad del tamaño del mar Caspio que ahora causaría la inundación de zonas donde viven hasta 100 millones de personas. Entonces, esto es un problema que solo se puede combatir con adaptación, y este conocimiento local que tienen estos transhumantes, estos pastores móviles, para enfrentarse a estos cambios es una pieza fundamental para conservar nuestra capacidad de adaptación al cambio. Pero aparte, también la transhumancia mitiga, y esto es una cosa que hemos trabajado en nuestro grupo de trabajo en el Basque Center for Climate Change, donde hemos analizado diferentes tipos de producción pastoril ligadas a la transhumancia en este paper del International Journal of Life Cycle Assessment. Y lo que hemos sacado es, aparte de que las transhumancias tienen una huella de carbono mucho más baja que sus equivalentes sedentarias, es que además esta huella de carbono está caracterizada por una proporción muy baja de combustibles fósiles, que al fin y al cabo son el verdadero problema del cambio climático. Y además, si tenemos en cuenta el fondo natural de emisión de los ecosistemas de gases como el metano, pues que se debería restar a estos sistemas que imitan también el movimiento de herbívoros salvajes, pues acabamos concluyendo que son sistemas extraordinariamente bajos en emisiones. Bien, estas pruebas también las hemos hecho en otras zonas del mundo, en Tanzania en concreto. Hemos comparado las emisiones del Parque Nacional del Serengeti con zonas pastoriles aledañas en este paper publicado en NPJ Climate Science, y lo que hemos comprobado es que las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero en zonas pastoriles son equivalentes totalmente a las emisiones en zonas ocupadas por herbívoros silvestres, lo que revela que no deberíamos contar estas emisiones que ahora mismo se reflejan en los inventarios nacionales como antropogénicas, sino que son naturales. Y toda esta producción, básicamente cero en carbono, depende de este conocimiento tradicional del que son repositorios. Entonces, bueno, sabemos de los enormes beneficios de la transhumancia que están asociados a su patrimonio inmaterial, pero las comunidades necesitan persistir para conservarlo. Entonces, en el marco de la declaración de la transhumancia como patrimonio inmaterial de la humanidad, se revela necesario la elaboración de un plan de salvaguarda, como suele pasar con todos estos conocimientos vernáculos cuando merece la pena protegerlos, que se traduce en la protección del sistema productivo mediante la búsqueda de una sostenibilidad no solo ambiental, sino también económica y social, es decir, dar de oportunidades para que se puedan rescatar estos sistemas de la extinción, y contemplarla además como un socioecosistema, es decir, un ecosistema vivo también por los pueblos que lo componen, y un sistema alimentario importante que puede dar de comer a la gente. Esto refleja las perspectivas que ya capturamos en este otro trabajo en la revista One Earth. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you so much for your intervention, Pablo. And before finish this event, I'm going to ask our panelists one question, or final question, because we are running out of time. So, in a word or phrase, what's the future of our cultural heritage in relation to climate change? Can we be optimistic?
Antonio, ideally, we should be able to adopt a joint work decision on culture and climate in this COP. We have prepared the ground, of course, from a civil society perspective. There is a willingness at the level of the COP, but of course we need the states here present, here represented, and of course the Paris Agreement and UNFCCC to agree on such a decision. If we cannot make it this year, a declaration could be a very good outcome, and hopefully in COP29, which will take place in Europe, we should for sure strive to a formal decision on culture and climate. Of course, this is the formalistic part of the exercise. I do believe that it depends on all of us as circular citizens in our daily works, in our families, in our communities, to promote this relationship, and as Spain is already doing, to spread the good practices and the good messages, not only throughout the European Union, but also in the Spanish-speaking countries, I would say, and also across the world, to convey this new message and this new culture climate narrative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Silvia?
In one sentence, just one sentence, I think if we are able to work together, we will be able to fight for and save our planet in the context of the climate change, and then we will be able to fight for and save our cultural heritage.
Thank you.
Well, I think that it could be, I'm an optimist, and I think that in one sentence, I choose a sentence that is in the Green Book. It's a sentence of Miquel Iceta Llorens, ex-Minister of Culture. It says, "Without memory, there is no future, and Spain is a country rich in memory, in heritage, with traces of a past that we have become used to always having nervy." For me, it's exemplary.
Thank you. So, with these hoping words that we hope it will make us to move forward in terms of cultural heritage and climate change in the COP. So, on the behalf on the Ministry of Culture of Spain, we hope you have enjoyed this debate and to have generated a fruitful debate. So, thank you so much for your attention. Take care and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.